The top 6 Big Ten football teams with the most 2025 NFL draft prospects. All right, so before we get to this list, what I did just to make sure what I was coming up with was accurate is I went through the past 3 drafts just because I didn't want to go past the COVID times, and I felt like it was a good sample size to look at. So the 2024, 2023, and the 2022 draft, and see how many players were drafted with the 14 Big Ten teams, and then how many would have been drafted with the 18 Big Ten teams. And then after we look at these 6 teams, we'll go back and we'll see, okay, or we'll go forward and see 2025, how many players with the 14 teams and how many players with the 18 teams. What does that look like? Is it comparable? Is it something that makes sense? We'll see from there. So 2020, let's start most recent one, 2024. The Big Ten, the 14 team Big Ten had 42 players drafted. That's really low for the 14 team Big Ten. It's the lowest of the 3 that we looked at. But with the addition of the 4 teams from out west, the Big Ten would have actually had the most of any conference at 69, which is crazy that the Big Ten would end up with the most players. Now, that also contributes to the Big Ten having more teams than the SEC, but still, that would be something that would be pretty incredible for the Big Ten to accomplish. In 2023, 14 teams in the Big Ten had 55 players drafted. If you would have added in the Pac-12 teams, again, it would have been 69 for the 18 Big Ten teams. So not as much of a boost from Oregon, Washington, UCLA, and USC there. And then 2022, 48 players with the 14 original Big Ten teams, and then 62 with the 18 Big Ten teams. So it's pretty reliable. There's for 2 years that you got 14 teams from the 18 team, or 14 players from the 18 team Big Ten added onto it. But the very most recent year, like I said, 14 team Big Ten had 42 players. You add in the Pac-12 teams, an 18 team Big Ten, 69 players. That is a huge jump to get from 14 to 18 teams. All right, let's look at the teams with the most draft prospects, and we'll just start at number one. Number one, Ohio State. Ohio State returned a lot of their players from last year that could have gone to the draft, and they're actually coming back this year to stay and play another year, try to win a national championship, try to beat Michigan. And so their predicted first rounders, they have 3 of them, 3 predicted first rounders. Now, these guys are not like top 20, so they're all kind of on the edge a little bit. We'll see if they really stick with it, or maybe they jump up, get in the top 20, or maybe even get in the top 10. I don't think any of these guys are going to be a top 5 pick. I think you normally have to have a little bit more buzz for yourself if you're going to jump up to there. But who knows? Anything could happen. Emeka Egbuka might go off this year or something like that. So their top projected prospects, the first rounders, are Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver, Denzel Burke, the cornerback, and Tyleik Williams, the interior defensive lineman. Those are their 3 that are all in top 30, but not necessarily top 20. They're kind of in that 20 to 30 pick range. And honestly, some of them could scoot out of the first round. Some of them could get even higher. And then the next guy that is outside of the first round, but he could actually find himself scooting into the first round because I believe he was 42nd in the consensus NFL draft big board, Jack Sawyer. Jack Sawyer, defensive end, really came on strong at the end of the year last year with his sack total. Played a really good game against Missouri. He could have gone to the NFL. Probably wouldn't have been a first round draft pick. I don't think he would have gotten that, but he definitely would have been a day 2 pick at the very least. But he opts to come back instead. And then the next guy after that is Quinshon Judkins, the running back. You could say JT Tuimoloau, but those guys are really close. And so with that, I just went with personal opinion. And I think right now, with hype and who the player is, you're probably going to get Quinshon Judkins drafted higher than JT Tuimoloau. Things could change. JT could have a great season this year. I just don't think he has sack numbers. I don't think that he has the crazy, parts of his game that people really look for in those defensive ends. All right, next one, Michigan with 4 predicted first round draft picks and 8 total predicted draft picks. 8 seems low. I could see them getting a little bit higher than that, but we'll see. Their top prospects, the first round draft picks. I mean, everybody's gonna know these guys: Will Johnson, cornerback; Mason Graham, interior defensive tackle; Colston Loveland, tight end; and then Kenneth Grant, the interior defensive tackle. He's a freak, absolute, crazy athleticism. The fifth guy, you probably are looking at either Donovan Edwards, the running back, or Rod Moore, the safety. Rod Moore obviously going to have a little bit of a harder time, increasing his draft stock. But if Donovan Edwards has a really good year, he could really increase his draft stock and do a really good job this year. So we'll see if he can do that. Next, number 3, Penn State. Penn State with 2 predicted first round draft picks and 8 total draft picks. So Michigan gets ahead of them, even though they're tied at 8. Michigan does get ahead of them with half of their players being projected to go in the first round. Penn State, their first round projected draft picks are Abdul Carter, the edge, and Dennis-Sutton, the defensive lineman, who is more of a defensive end. I don't know why they didn't list him as an edge, but defensive lineman. So that's what they listed him as. The next guys after that are Kevin Winston Jr. These guys are not first rounders. Kevin Winston Jr., the safety; Drew Aller, the quarterback; and Nick Singleton, the running back. So very strong prospects for running backs here, and what we're seeing. Oregon also with 8 predicted total draft picks, however, only with 1 first rounder. That 1 first rounder is Evan Stewart, the wide receiver coming over from Texas A&M. We're going to talk a little bit more about him later on in the episode, but it's interesting how much buzz he continues to have off his recruiting rankings. He's had good seasons. He had nearly 700 yards in only 10 games his freshman year. He was all SEC, and he had 600 some yards in only 8 games last year. But he's just not put up the crazy numbers that you would see from a wide receiver that is being projected first round. I mean, Evan Stewart right now is being projected over Emeka Egbuka, and Emeka Egbuka could get the record for the most receiving yards at Ohio State before his career is over. Evan Stewart has barely cracked 1,000 in his career. Again, he's missed games, and Texas A&M has kind of been a dumpster fire with Jimbo Fisher there and the way he runs his offense. But still, he's riding off that recruiting ranking still quite a bit, and we'll see what his future looks like. I do think he'll probably end up being a first rounder, so I'm not knocking him, but that's my thought. The next guy, not a first rounder, Jabbar Muhammad, the cornerback. Josh Connerly, I always want to say Conley. Josh Connerly Jr., the offensive tackle. Tez Johnson, the wide receiver, and Johnny Cornelius, the inside offensive lineman. Johnny Cornelius. So Oregon, I mean, on top of having excellent wide receivers and an excellent secondary, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the guys they have there. They also have the line of scrimmage settled on. So you're going to feel good about this Oregon team this year at the line of scrimmage on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. You're going to feel good about the secondary. You got a lot of things to feel really good about this year. If you're Oregon, it's kind of crazy. They only have 8 projected draft picks. I would think they're much higher than that. But at least where we sit right now, that's where we're at. Do I think they're going to end with 8? No. I think they're probably going to be more around 10 draft picks. I think that some more guys will kind of sneak in before the year's up, but we'll see. That's the thought for now. Number 5, Iowa. Iowa has been more of an NFL factory than I think people realize. Now, no predicted first round draft picks, but 7 predicted draft picks. Pretty cool. Xavier Nwapaka, the safety, is their highest one. Luke Lachey, the tight end, is next. Jay Higgins is third. Sebastian Castro, the DB, he might be drafted as a safety, might be drafted as a corner. We'll see what the thought process there is, but he has some versatility. And then Yahya Black, Yaha, however you pronounce it, Black, the edge rusher. He also seems to have some pretty good draft consideration from around the league. So Iowa doing what Iowa does. They are going to put guys in the league, and they're going to do it at a pretty cool rate. So like I said, safety, tight end, linebacker, DB, edge, still focusing primarily on that defense. We'll see if Tim Lester can, get some offensive talent in the NFL. And then last but certainly not least, I guess not even last, 6, USC. USC has 4 predicted total draft picks. That's Bear Alexander, the defensive tackle, Jonah Monheim, however you pronounce his name. He's a center. He's played offensive tackle in the past, so he has that versatility, which is nice. Joquavius Marks, Woody Marks, the running back, and Kamari Ramsey, the safety. Those look to be the guys who are currently to be drafted from USC this year. I tend to believe USC is probably going to get some more guys. They have 2 defensive guys there, 2 offensive guys there. I think Miller Moss can play his way into the NFL draft this year. I think that you have some playmakers on defense who can find their way into the draft this year, and it'll be really interesting to see. Maryland, Minnesota, and Wisconsin all have 2 predicted draft picks. Michigan State, Purdue, UCLA, and Washington all have 1. And then Illinois, Indiana, Nebraska, Northwestern, Rutgers have no predicted draft picks. Nebraska surprised me. I would have thought somebody on that defensive line. If nobody else, Nash Hutmacher, he would have been at least a day 3 pick, but I don't know. That's what the numbers came out as. So, all in all together, the 2025 estimated draft numbers for the 14-team Big Ten, 45 players, which that looks right. We've had 42, 55, 48 the last few years, so that fits right in there. And then the 18-team Big Ten, 59 players, which is rather low. But as I said before, I do think there's going to be some more players that emerge from USC, Nebraska. I don't think they're going to get 0, and I could see more players emerging from Oregon as well. I don't think you're going to see 14 players combined drafted from the schools from the Pac-12. Just seems too low for me personally. All right, let's take a break really fast, then we'll come back and we will get into some training camp stuff for Ohio State.